Christmas. It's a day that stands at the absolute pinnacle of joy and camaraderie in this world. It is, in its very essence, a time that brings us all together, regardless of race, creed, or any material difference, to simply embrace that part of humanity which unites us all. But of course, it's only natural that with a celebration practiced by man for over 2,000 years, we've managed to project those feelings, ideals, and heart of the classic holiday spirit into countless avatars of goodness. No different than the many heroes from legend who came before, and just as boundless in number. So today, to help you start your Christmas right, we'll be looking at 12 of these jolly disciples to rank how the collective vestiges of winter cheer would stack up to one another in a fight. Now, if you're ready to see Frosty punch Rudolph in the face, then smash that subscribe button for me, make yourself feel nice and cozy, and let's start with a few ground rules. The first one is pretty simple. We'll be ranking these characters by their holistic combat abilities. And as you might guess, in a clash of the merry and bright, some of these characters will be literal manifestations of holiness, and others will be deformed reindeer and snowmen. So just keep in mind this isn't a lifting competition, and we are ranking them by their ability to outbox other winter-themed super people. And as for the second and final rule, because many of these characters have been around for, well, a really long time, we'll just be looking at the composite versions of all of them, unless mentioned otherwise. Keeping all that in mind now, let's kick this list off with our very first placement. This stupid-looking, fluffy mother... Anyways, I really hated this guy when I was a kid due to this trauma-inducing face. But otherwise, he's a pretty average contender on this list, and a good place to start as a measuring stick for who's strong and who's not on the rest of this list. In terms of feats, the abominable snow monster manages to take on a young Rudolph by smacking him with a rock hard enough to shatter it on his face, and his speed should be pretty middling as he doesn't really scale to any of the more holly or jolly contenders on this list. Really, he's only here so I can express my undying hatred for him. And for that, the demon from Christmas Past is hard into the C tier. Next up though, on the opposite side of the spectrum, someone I actually really like, the Grinch. Someone who started off not so merry, but ended up with the most cardiac arrest-inducing change of tune this side of the North Pole. With a heart 3 sizes too big, we can all remember the insane physical amps he was granted. Lifting up an entire sleigh filled with the entire Christmas setup of a large town, which already makes him a casual superhuman, but even the things the Grinch was pulling off long before this are way underrated. Like, listen to this. He tiptoed into the yard and found some ground that wasn't hard, and there, much faster than a mole, the Grinch began to dig a hole. He dug that hole deep as could be, and deep as sleep as deep as sea. It did not stop, it just went on, to hither, thither, there, and yon, to upper Milf and lower Malf, until it came out into the gulf of Zich Azulf, almost as far as halfway to the nearest star. Besides being absolutely straight bars on the part of Dr. Seuss, even the most charitable interpretations of this little page here says this man casually just dug a hole all the way to the sea from above these snowy hilltops. And at worst, we could straight up say that he just moved to the closest star in like no time. He's also fought the Cat in the Hat and has way more feats besides that. So the Grinch solo's your favorite verse, don't fight me. Easy A tier. But now that we've got ourselves a higher tier and a mid tier, why don't we go ahead and move on to someone who's definitively trash. The elf on the shelf. While seemingly pretty innocuous, these little guys are the embodiment of Santa's expansion into Western corporate greed, as he has monopolized and minified his elves into these sneaky, devilish, spying snow spawn. But in terms of their actual threat level, whether you're talking about Chippy, Newsy, or this dude from the old book, aside from being fast enough to fly back to the North Pole, give a detailed report on all your many shortcomings, and then come back in the span of a single night, these guys have minimal destructive power, aside from being a little annoying, and since they're instructed not to move when being watched, while having a weakness to humans so severe that a singular touch will strip them of all their magic, yeah, these little guys are going into like F tier, even if we did all own one, or 10. But now that you're starting to get the hang of this, and to fill out those tiers for you, I think it's finally about time for one of our trademark speed rounds. You ready? Go! Scrooge McDuck, because come on, he's an absolute classic Christmas spin on a good old Ebenezer, and an OP character at that. He's dodged lightning bolts on a number of occasions, survived stupid explosions with his Toon Force, and is one of the oldest characters with a ridiculous amount of fighting experience. So just trust me when I say that high A tier is a minimum. John McClane, or better known as Bruce Willis from Die Hard. It's a Christmas movie, I guess, and I mean, he's fought some superhumans in his own right, so I'm gonna say he at least beats the corporate elves. D tier. Another barely Christmas rep for the list, Gizmo from Gremlins. Now, while a singular gremlin might manage to lose to the shelved elf, with a single splash of water or just a little too much to eat, these guys can multiply into dangerous threats that, with their human plus level power, at least deserve to be in the D tier. Another human rep for the list, Kevin McAllister. Time might not have treated Macaulay Culkin quite so nicely, but his films aged like fine wine. With enough prep time, he'd probably solo the Justice League or something, but with his usual kit, he's probably struggling with the elf. F tier. And now, to move out of our speed round, let's look at Jack Skellington. Now, this guy is neat, because in his original movie, all he really does is get shot down by a howitzer. But in The Nightmare Before Christmas Oogie's Revenge from the PS2 exclusively, this guy is absolutely broken. He got stretchy ghost arms that can literally attack a person's soul or shadows. He can deflect projectiles, can turn his hand into a morning star, can rip your soul out, make shields, has 2 Super Saiyan-esque forms with new powers, and worst of all, Jack can, at any time, force a lethal dance battle between himself and anyone else on the list that cannot be prevented, completely shifting the battle into his favor, while even randomly spawning in entire spotlights and backup dancers to aid him. So unless your favorite Christmas rep can, or then yeah, Jack is soloing. Fortunately for us though, literally everyone in A tier and above has a banger theme song. So the best I can do for Jack is the very top of B tier. But now, that means we're on to the cream of the crop, the most powerful and potent of all the Christmas characters I know. And who better to kick that list off than Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? Well yes, as a small baby reindeer, he sort of got his tail handed to him by the abominable snow monster. As a fully grown stag, now imbued with the Christmas magic, he's considered powerful enough to lead Santa's reindeer, who can move his sleigh at around 3% the speed of light. Yes, I'm serious. Then you combine that with the fact that his magical nose is protected by Lady Boreal as long as he's in the North Pole, and the fact that said magical nose can melt away entire Christmas storms, or just the fact that Rudolph has canonically also met some other Christmas characters like Frosty, I can't possibly put him any lower than B tier due to that cross-verse scaling. Speaking of Frosty though, it is finally time. My personal favorite avatar of all that is good and holly. Frosty the Snowman. He's likely one of the most underrated characters on this whole entire list. Yeah, you remember Rudolph, yeah? The 3% the speed of light Rudolph. Yeah, that one. Frosty kept up with him. Just look at that Frosty go. But unlike Rudolph, who is just a red-nosed reindeer, Frosty possesses the magic power of being an incorporeal eldritch deity of the snow, whose existence is only limited by his hat. You thought this guy was Frosty? Oh no. This is Frosty. And as long as his hat still exists, nothing can put this guy down for good, even melting. His abilities are on a whole other level from everyone else on the list so far, as he has flight, complete weather manipulation, snow manipulation, regeneration, and a durability so powerful that he could handle the literal embodiment of winter, Jack Frost, attacking him with winter storms. So with a body that can't be destroyed by anyone lower than him, a magical hat that grants him powers rivaling the physical representation of winter, all on top of potentially years of training in the North Pole, Frosty makes for an easy A tier. But even at that, the likes of Frosty, Scrooge, and the Grinch are clearly going to have to watch out for one more competitor. Snoopy the dog. With his literal toon force and presence in the story, the sort of things this beagle can and has managed to do are utterly ridiculous. He once learned magic from just reading a book. He can outfight or surpass most other Peanuts cast members like Charlie Brown or Lucy, who can run around the planet at hypersonic speeds in their own right, and by Charles M. Schultz's own admission, Snoopy is a very strong character. He can win or lose, be a disaster, a hero, or anything, and yet it all works out. I like the fact that when he's in trouble, he can retreat into a fantasy and thereby escape. Well, a wholesome and sweet message from the author about the all-around joys of a fantasy world. In a power scaling sense, where we throw all the joy and cheer straight out the window, this says to me that whatever the Snoop needs to make happen, will happen. And while Scrooge and the Grinch also possess some level of minor toon force, there's absolutely no reason to assume Snoopy can't just grab anyone else in A tier and proceed to chuck them all straight into hammer space. The only reason why he's landing at the top of A tier instead of higher is because he can canonically lose or be afraid, which will then nerf his toon force straight out of existence. Meaning, the final 12th place character is left as none other than the mythological entity of the holiday season tied to the behavior of children, Krampus. Yes, if you're unfamiliar, the horned anthropomorphic figure of Central Alpine folklore is known for traveling the world during a dark December night, and punishing bad children in some of the worst ways. The half-goat, half-demon monster is known across countless countries, dozens of canons, and exists as the polar opposite of everything Christmas stands for. He's seeped into the likes of comics, films, and even real-world mythology, all to such an extent that saying his otherworldly demonic powers would truly let him punish anyone on the naughty list, no matter how strong, would be an understatement. This would mean even the strongest of the A tier would be quivering by his presence. So as the first and perhaps only S tier capable of eating the souls of the innocent, does that make the evil and malicious spirit of Alpine Christmases past the peak power of the holiday season? Yeah, no, what did you really expect? You wanted a whole Christmas video where I didn't talk about Santa Claus? The Santa Claus, even once? Everything that Krampus stands for is this eldritch horror of legend. Santa matches and surpasses a billion-fold. Of course, Santa was always far faster than the likes of a Lightspeed Rudolph, and he was capable of carrying a planet or more's worth of toys on his back at any given time, on top of having magical powers that far surpass the likes of Frosty the Snowman. But that's without ever even getting into the countless other pieces of media that depict him, granting him powers ranging from freezing time to creating pocket dimensions, teleporting, and even control over life itself, before ever even looking at what the comic book versions of the character, yes, the literal Marvel and DC versions, they exist, actually bring to the table, because it's pretty much outright stated that Santa is the strongest Omega level mutant in Marvel, perhaps even rivaling the nearly omnipotent Phoenix Force and easily slapping most of your favorite heroes.
No witnesses?
Or just other generally stupid feats like delivering a lump of coal to Darkseid every single year. With even 1% of his true power, he's got an absolute chokehold on almost all of comics as a whole, let alone the rest of fiction. And as a light mirror to Krampus's darkness, the goat-horned menace wouldn't even be able to act in the jurisdiction of Santa's cheer, which has been proven many, many times. I mean, really, go figure, the guy who represents the entire holiday stands alone atop the Christmas hierarchy in a tier of power and mysticism so far above the rest that there are no creatures left stirring there, not even the mouse. It's a place where the stockings stay hung by the chimney with care, always knowing that St. Nicholas alone would remain above them all right there. But with our list now complete and our holidays shared, go down below and tell me how we fared. Is our list still complete with those few who we named, or do the missing candidates demand we be shamed? Regardless of your thoughts, leave your own lists down below, reminding us why Hinkles and Heat Misers aren't just for show. But now that it's over, just subscribe if you may, cause that's all for today. we really are done. Thanks for the great time and year. Ever.
Frosty the snowman was a jolly, happy soul, with a corn-cob pipe and a button nose and two